The next day, Kim Minjun, tell the truth, a voice came out. Do you want to re-enlist? That person, Minjun coldly replied, no. So do you have regression? That person heard the answer, so he asked again. No, he still coldly replied. If that's not the case, then don't do anything thoughtless like yesterday. The person who asked was Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. He sat up straight and said to Minjun with a straight face. This time it was just your luck. But since you're a hunter, you don't know what will happen next time, Sung-ho said in a low voice. Minjun silently looked at the sergeant. In his mind he thought, it's not lucky, but I have to stand still. You also know, the Hunter Corps is a special organization. Its scale is different from other corps. Even though the corps is division level, it only has 4 companies, Sung-ho explained to Minjun, even the corps. The attached squadron also had a much smaller number of soldiers than regular army companies. Because not all awakened people can join the army. But why are you suddenly talking about this? Minjun sat up straight and looked at the sergeant, thinking to himself. How can you imagine that? The sergeant said, looking at Minjun. Minjun was confused by the sergeant's statement. Because in the Hunter Corps, from private to division commander, Sergeant Sung-ho clenched his fists until his veins appeared and said with a serious face, all of them were awakened people. Of course not all are combat members, the sergeant further explained. Especially among the officers, the majority are administrative staff, monster researchers, tactics and weapons researchers. I remember the soldier I met before. Minjun let out a loud sound. But all of them are awakened people, and hunter soldiers are not promoted by their time in the army but by their strength and achievements, the sergeant said as he stood up, looked down at Minjun and said. Since early morning the company commander called me to come. So I was expecting that something good would happen, but, looking up at the sergeant, Minjun thought to himself, what is this about? Training time, that's a good thing to say. I was called to the company commander's room early in the morning, so I was looking forward to it, right? The sergeant glanced at me and raised his mouth. I'm looking forward to you, Kim Minjun, the sergeant said. Minjun was surprised by Sung-ho's words. Today, the sergeant said. A black car is driving fast on the road. The car is shiny and brand new. The front of the car has a red plate, 2 yellow stars. The hunter has hunted the most monsters in the division's history, 1 out of 4, the sergeant said in a serious voice. In the car, the majestic man sat in the back seat. The soldier in the front also sat upright and seriously drove. The car braked, the wheels friction with the road surface, causing smoke and dust to fly. The car door opened and a strong foot stepped down. Came to visit our company, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho said. The bearded man with an air of authority looked at the sergeant and the others standing still to greet him. The person who shouted the order was Company Ha, Company Commander Commander Lee Junbyom. The people standing seriously in line from right to left are Company 2 Operations Officers, Captain Song Junsik, Company 2 Platoon Leader, Captain Seo Jung-an, Company 2, Lieutenant 2nd Squad, 2nd Lieutenant, Kim Chailman, 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad Leader, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. The commander shook hands and said in a serious tone, Sergeant, Lee Sung-ho. I heard you handled the scene very calmly yesterday, you worked hard, the commander said. Thank you, Commander, Sung-ho replied solemnly. It's been a long time since I last saw everyone, the commander said to Sung-ho. The people around thought worriedly, their eyes looked like murder. I wonder what the Hunter Corps standard for achieving 2 stars is. Minjun stood looking at the scene before his eyes and thought to himself. You are Kim Minjun, the commander shook hands and asked Minjun. Private, Kim Minjun is me, he replied loudly and seriously. Oh, I used a lot of force when shaking my hand, Minjun thought, glancing down. That's right, everyone just relax. As the commander said, he patted Minjun's shoulder a few times and said with a cheerful smile, while Minjun was startled by the commander's pat on the shoulder. Have you grasped the location where the gate appeared? The commander asked. Yes, have determined the location on a hill in the northeast 1.2 kilometers from the barracks, currently controlling the surrounding area and investigating the ranks of the communists, 2nd Team Captain Lee Junbyom replied. If verified, immediately report to the division commander's office. Upon hearing the report, the commander immediately responded. What is the problem with the radar? The commander looked at Captain Song Junsik and asked. The alarm did not go off until the middle back was inside the core. It was determined that the problem was not in the equipment. We are checking the problem, Commander said. If it's not due to equipment, then the problem is in numbers. We will report to the military region and install more radars. Obeying the order, Captain Seo Jung-an replied loudly. Minjun looked at the scene before him and chuckled, thinking, everyone is scared, so cool. Kim Minjun, yesterday you did something brave. Your initial reaction was quick, but you also had to think about yourself. You had to bring your equipment with you. The commander looked at Minjun and said with a smile. Private Kim Minjun, it's my fault. On the surface, he answered seriously. On the inside he thought, if this keeps up, the army will disappear. Sorry, are you kidding? As he said, the commander walked over. Dealing with 30 people alone, the commander happily smiled and asked, yes. Minjun seriously replied to the commander, if you don't react quickly, watch out, the soldiers will explode. Very good, the commander praised. Praise Minjun. Hearing the commander praise Minjun, the others were surprised and sweaty when they heard it. The division commander will give you a gift, the commander said. Having said that, he reached out and tore off the badge on Minjun's shirt. Immediately after, he put another badge on. Congratulations on your promotion. Originally you had to pass several tests. Soldiers with overwhelming results will be rewarded, the commander happily said to Minjun. Private Kim Minjun thanked you. Minjun loudly stood still, which says, Company commander, this guy will have 3 days and 2 nights off. The commander turned to look at Lee Junbyom giving orders. Obeyed, he replied. Minjun suddenly thought to himself, he didn't expect to be promoted. But also rest, Minjun thought with pleasure, military life is getting more and more interesting. Feet are walking. Minjun is following Lieutenant Kim Chaelman. Very good kid, you just came in and haven't said a few words yet, you've already achieved results. Thanks to that I was praised. The lieutenant turned his head to look at Minjun and said with a smile. Thank you, Minjun replied smiling. I just joined the army and can go home. What are you going to do when you go out? The lieutenant happily asked Minjun curiously. Minjun said with a happy face, On the city sidewalk, Minjun was walking. Look at the PC store in front of you. Minjun smiled happily and said, of course it's an internet shop. Anyway, back home in the control area, Minjun smiled happily and thought, all the prints were cut off. Until I get called, I have to spend these 3 days and 2 nights really hard, he thought as he excitedly walked into the center. Boss, are you here? A person spoke up before Minjun entered. Are you going there again? A person who was drinking looked at the guy who called and said, Boss, don't mention it again. Damn soldiers. He was dissatisfied and said to the fat man, I didn't go into that cave, just planning to pick some mushrooms around. They stopped me. I gave the money to the mountain owner and it was accepted. The thin man sat down and said, the fat man offered him a drink but he refused because he was driving. The fat man had just finished drinking a glass of wine. Said, Changsun went there before it was banned. I heard there was toxic gas in the mountain. Changsun's mind has since become unconscious. If you go there, you will encounter problems, he continued. Just wear a gas mask, the skinny guy said angrily. Where is that? A voice rang out. Both men turned around in surprise to see that it was Minjun. The two glanced at each other without saying anything. At a place 200 meters away from Hwachoen, the car was moving. Can I find it from here? A voice rang out. Oh yes, thank you for bringing me here, another voice replied. Thank you for taking me there. Minjun smiled and said to the fat man, even if we went any further, the army would block the way, we couldn't go. He asked a little curiously, but you went up the mountain to solve that problem. Really? Yes, by tomorrow we can go up the mountain, Minjun replied. Both of them looked at the badge on Minjun's shirt. Anyway, be careful. If anyone asks, don't say we'll take you there. Then he drove away. Minjun looked after and replied, yes, don't worry. The mountain continuously emitted a dark aura. I left the internet shop to come here. Looking at that air, Minjun smiled and thought, this familiar smell, it sure is it. The flow of air is constantly emitted. Minjun smiled and said in his heart, magic. There are 2 guards guarding here. Minjun looked up from the tree and thought, the mountain gate was carefully fenced while the dungeon was loosely fenced. If that's the case, Minjun's hand is naturally filled with darkness, he thought, as a private, it's not good to stand out too much. The airflow slowly flew out. The dark aura enveloped the 2 soldiers. Why suddenly my stomach hurts? One spoke up, my stomach hurts too, the other continued. You too? The soldier asked, looking at his teammates. Ha, I'll hold off for a bit, sorry but it probably won't work, the other soldier replied. Hey, no one is coming here anyway, let's go deal with it quickly, it should take about 5 minutes. Then the soldier ran away, obeying the order. The other soldier also agreed and ran in another direction. There are no guards in front of the cave gate. Minjun quickly jumped in. He happily smiled. His hand placed on the ground, he thought suspiciously, why is there no trace of a monster, but the magic power is dense. Minjun smiled and thought, anyway. His hand cast magic, then he brought it forward to cast the spell. The system continuously reports increased magic points. Magic power continued to increase. Minjun looked at the system that was constantly increasing and said, it's increased. The system reported that because Minjun had absorbed enough magic power, he had the power of the Rot skill and the Night Walker skill was unleashed. Minjun smiled happily. After absorbing magic power, notification boxes continuously appear around it. The magic energy absorption meets certain standards, the power of the Rot skill. Absorbing a certain amount of magic power, the Night Walker skill is released. Seeing that, Minjun smiled with satisfaction. Minjun absorbed the magic power and thought, he was lucky. Then the bulletin board showed another message, Kim Minjun, founder of the Lumi Nuna Church, is my favorite character, strength is 60, agility is 60, stamina is 60, only the number of magic power each is 15, the skills possessed are rotten night walker. Minjun saw the bulletin board continuing to absorb magic power and thought, I can't believe there is a skill to use magic power for free. Minjun thought of a new ability, summoning animals in the form of a night walker shadow. This guy has the special trait of hiding under the shadow and assassinating the target, is a welcome name, quite useful since being in Isgard. To maintain the summoning, you must feed it an equivalent amount of magic power at each certain cycle, but after thinking about it, Minjun summoned and appeared, thinking in his heart, he is a guy worth the price. Suddenly an arm appeared. Boom! A shadow monster appeared. The monster was so small that it flew in front of Minjun, but he didn't know what to say. Minjun pursed his lips and wondered, what is this? Is it also a punishment due to space transformation, or is it because the magic index is too low? Then he looked out the door and saw the light shining in, thinking, anyway, this is really too much. Where is this skinny guy who looks like he's about to melt even if a ray of sunlight shines in right now? Oh. Suddenly Minjun discovered something and said, wait. Small in stature, is he a summoner that can hide under the shadow? Minjun analyzed, and the shadow opened his arms and said, I'm hungry. Return to the military area. Going into the room, Kim Minjun said, reporting that Private First Class Kim Minjun had returned from vacation. Everyone in the room also came out to greet him. Everyone greeted him in front of him. Who is this? I'm not a hunter. Is it the earliest to end your life as a private? I heard that the division commander at various levels gave you a leave of absence, and the division commander also directly assigned you a military rank. Minjun said, yes, that's right. Suddenly, Minjun realized something. Then turned around while everyone was still talking. That's really good, I realized it right away, you lie. Kim Minjun then took out a paper bag. Minjun took it out and gave it to Dongjun and said, I bought a bottle of lotion, you should use it. Dongjun was surprised by the gift and said, oh, me, did you buy all of these too? Dongjun took out the gift, looked at it and happily said, thank you, I will use it well. Suddenly Kim Guangshik came into the room and said, have you returned from overseas deployment? What a touching comradeship. Talking, he suddenly asked seriously, did you buy what I asked for, Maxim? Minjun honestly said, yes, here it is. Then handed out a few packages that made him blush. Dongjun turned around and asked, if I get promoted to the rank of senior soldier at this rate, I would have to treat him well. Minjun replied, of course. Captain Kim and Captain Joe passed by and saw him saying, ah yes, this youngest brother, just now I passed by the administrative board and saw the list of candidates taking the promotion exam, with your name on it too. Captain Kim asked, what, didn't that mean registration was finished before the youngest came back? No, after all, people who have joined for less than a year can't register themselves. Captain Joe also wondered, is the division commander registering for you? Even so, the timing doesn't match. Everyone in the room heard that and started talking, is the youngest brother taking the promotion exam? Is it possible? I'm not a private anymore. I'm not the youngest anymore. While talking, Minjun said, actually, the battalion commander of the training station gave me a proposal, recalling the time I met the battalion commander and discussed it with him in the room. Then the battalion commander shouted angrily. Minjun told everyone everything. Everyone gathered to listen in the room. But before he could react to what Minjun said, they all froze. Captain Joe sweat dropped and asked, how is it possible that you came here to take the promotion exam a year early? This is really a crazy guy. Captain Kim rubbed his chin and analyzed, at that time you were already a private first class, so this time it's the senior soldier promotion exam. Everyone still gathered around him and talked. If he passed all that then he was truly a crazy person, while Guangshik sat behind him and stirred the package Minjun brought home. Captain Kim happily cheered Minjun on. In short, those who take the promotion exam on Saturday will receive training before the promotion exam, and also main weapons training tomorrow, so please try your best, and Captain Joe goodbye too. Hey everyone, let's escape. The two of them went out the door and were still talking. Captain Kim, are you not taking the promotion exam? Captain Joe, are you going to pay a stake? Minjun sat listening and wondered, is the main weapon training different from the rifle? The next day, at the military zone, the lieutenant is talking about the exam regulations and methods. Please pay attention, I will briefly explain the promotion exam tomorrow. The whole room, from privates to privates and above, are listening to the lieutenant continue to speak. Those who have experience, even if the content is already known, should not do their own work so that first-time test takers can focus. After the reminder, the lieutenant said the regulations. First, the Hunter Promotion Exam is divided into two main types. The Hunter Promotion Exam is conducted in the order of essay exam and practical exam. The essay exam can be passed easily with basic knowledge, level is easier than the driver's license essay test, but... After listening, Kim Minjun went back to his room. While walking and thinking, as expected, the most important thing is still the practice test, right? In the practice test, the mastery of the main weapon will be tested and the status and ability to deal with monsters will be tested. Although passing the exam is definitely within reach, I don't know what kind of rewards will there be if I get the maximum score. Maybe I should try taking the exam a little more seriously. The next day, it was cool outside and all kinds of weapons were displayed in front of us. The lieutenant stood in front of all the soldiers and said loudly, "From now on, the practical exam will begin with main weapons training. Private and first-class soldiers should not choose another weapon but should pick up a sword." Everyone responded, clearly. Then everyone went to get their weapons as instructed. The lieutenant continued to talk. The senior soldiers took their weapons and walked over there to practice individually. "If you catch someone lazy smoking, you're dead to me." After getting the weapons, everyone gathered in formation. The lieutenant said, "From now on, what the training officer teaches is the basic swordsmanship in the Hunter Corps' teachings, to put it clearly. Obviously, it's not just about mechanically following the Dharma. The basic gist of the Hunter Corps swordsmanship is to adapt it to suit yourself." After finishing the instructions, he shouted loudly and asked, "Is it clear?" Everyone responded loudly, "Yes, clearly." Then, the lieutenant continued to speak loudly. "First of all, the basics are important, so look at me and follow, don't roll your eyes around but focus on." After speaking, he performed sword movements in one go. The movement was so precise and laborious that when it stopped, the dust around the sword emitted a cloud of smoke. Minjun looked at the sword movements and realized something. He knew why he trained with the main weapon. Remember when you used magic to kill monsters? Capturing monsters with just a rifle was a foolish move, he thought. Everyone started practicing and asked each other, "Is this what it is?" Minjun also practiced the movements again. Minjun thinks back, swordsmanship is better in Isgard. Then while thinking and practicing the movements, it was time to jump up high, surprising everyone. Minjun finished the sentence, "But it's up to each person what to use." That's when Minjun performed the move and lowered himself to the ground. While practicing, the lieutenant suddenly shouted, "Everyone stop moving." Kim Minjun stepped forward. "I don't have anything to say, Private First Class Kim Minjun knows." Then I went up, but I still wondered, what's wrong? Then walked all the way up to the lieutenant's direction. The lieutenant loudly commented, "According to the training officer's observation, there are many broken and clumsy parts of everyone's movements. Let's observe for once how Private Kim Minjun does it." After hearing this, Minjun was surprised and a little panicked. Then started practicing according to the lieutenant's instructions. Minjun started doing the movements again. For every implementer, there is a guide. Smooth guiding movements. Everyone below gulped nervously. After practice, he found a cool place to sit down and said, "Phew, that's natural, I'm not a training assistant, sigh, it's so hot, there's no snow today." Suddenly the lieutenant appeared calling, "Kim Minjun." Kim Minjun turned back to look at the lieutenant who was searching for something in his pocket and said, "You've worked hard, the training officer is very pleased with you." Then he gave Minjun something and said, "Let's eat it alone." After giving it, the lieutenant also left. Minjun took the cake and thought, "I always carry this with me." After thinking about it, Minjun smiled. I was about to take off the cake and eat it, but someone came and called, "Minjun." Lee Dongjun asked a little shyly. I carefully watched the swordplay demonstration. "If possible, during the break, can you take a look at my posture?" Minjun stood up in surprise and asked again. "Me?" Lee Dongjun also explained, "I know it's your first time training today." Then Lee Dongjun shyly asked again, "The main weapon is a sword, but I'm still not satisfied when confronting monsters. You don't need to feel burdened. Can you take a look and help me?" Minjun heard that and replied, "If I needed help, I would have helped." Hearing that, Lee Dongjun started practicing the movements again. Minjun thought, the movements clearly showed that he had practiced very hard. This is truly the swordsmanship of the Hunter Corps. Kim Minjun was watching and remembered his timid appearance while working. Thinking about it, the problem wasn't the movements, what Private Lee Dongjun lacked was. His eyes were sharp and thoughtful, confident. Remembering when he was at Isgard training others, Minjun thought, "I'm also an expert in editing that, I'm looking at it." After thinking about it, he smiled and silently calculated, "That's right, this is not the time yet. When the time comes, I'll help him become a top hunter."